Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of Braintree District Council Cabinet, which is our first in person for nearly 15 months, I think. Rather unusual setup tonight, not our usual one, so that we are all socially distanced and obeying the existing rules that exist for indoor meetings, etc. As a result of that, we have some members who are not in the chamber here tonight, but are joining us on the webcast, and they're behind me and to my side. I will be permitting them all to participate in any debates that they wish to, but in the case of Councillor Bowers, who would normally be here as a cabinet member, under the rules, he will not be able to vote in the event of a vote being needed. Only those members who are present in the place, as I understand it, will be able to vote. But can I just say, I should probably forget to look to the screen or the chat function or whatever way we're doing it. So please, to colleagues who are not in the room, if you want to chat and I seem to have missed you, just shout, and I'll do my best then to come to you. Okay, without more ado then, we'll start. Apologies for absence. I have got apologies from Councillor Mrs Pell and Councillor Abbott. Those are the only apologies that we have. As I say, this meeting is being broadcast both on our BDC webcast and also on YouTube. And joining us tonight, we have got Councillor Bowers, as I said, one of our cabinet members, Councillor Mann, the leader of the Labour group, and for the first time our three new cabinet support members, Councillors Parker, Pritchard and Wrench. So welcome to all of you as well. Okay, without more ado, I'll go to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that anyone wishes to put on the table? I will declare a declaration of interest as a member of Essex County Council, and in particular a non-pecuniary interest in relation to the Open Spaces Supplementary Planning document, as I believe I have open spaces in my new cabinet portfolio at County. But I don't see any clash of there, but I will declare an NPI. Councillor Cunningham.
Mr Chairman, thank you for transparency. I'll declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council in relation to the same items. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Or, sorry, any other declarations? No? Right. Move on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. This was the meeting that was held, a virtual meeting that was held on the 8th of March. The minutes have been circulated. Are you happy that they are a true record? Agreed? Okay. I will sign those at the end of the meeting. Item 4, public question time. There are no members of the public who wish to either make comment or raise any questions. So that will take us to item 5 under the title Overall Strategy, and paper 5A, appointments to cabinet committees. It's a brief paper from pages 7 to 10. There are 3 recommendations. One, to note the appointment to the local plan subcommittee. It says, as set out in paragraph 3.5, it should just be actually 3.6 for accuracy. There is one change to the membership of that, in that Councillor Horner asked to step down and will be replaced by Councillor Mrs Dervish. And the second recommendation is the membership of the Developing Democracy Group, which is as set out in paragraph 3.9. And finally, to note that the reference groups that we had established in previous years, that we are abolishing those reference groups, and I'm leaving it to cabinet members to establish whether reference groups might be needed for any projects, and if so, it will be up to them to decide what will be the most appropriate make-up of those groups, etc. So with that, I will formally move the recommendations, but then ask if there are any comments from anyone at all. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Would the reference groups have to be Widdicomite at all?
No, they will be groups chosen by the cabinet members. The previous working groups weren't Widdicombe-ised. They were a mixture of local members or people with particular interests, etc. And indeed, some of them, I think most, had a fair, if not greater, representation of opposition groups than Widdicombe would say. But they don't come under the Widdicombe rules. Okay? I'm looking over to the big screen. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reinforce that is in fact the case. The opposition has been very, very well represented on these reference groups, and we thank you for that. I do hope that they will continue in some form in some places, because they, I think, have been most valuable in tracking some of these projects, and it would be a shame to see them disappear entirely, Chairman.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Mann. I'm sure Cabinet members will want to engage with non-administration members, non-executive members in taking some of those forward. It was just felt that to actually make them as standing committees was a bit sort of top-heavy. We may want to get groups together on a particular aspect of a project or something like that at quick notice, and we can do that more effectively this way. But it's not the intention not to involve members. Any other comments at all? Questions? No? Okay, thank you. The recommendations then are in 2.1 with the slight amendment of 3.5 and 3.8 to read 3.6 and 3.9. Could I have agreement to those? Agree. Fine, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 5B, which is starts at page 11 on your agenda, appointment to outside bodies, 11 to 17. Again, pretty straightforward in terms of the recommendations, although there will be a couple of amendments which I will draw to the attention of Cabinet shortly. The purpose of this is to approve any changes to the appointments that are necessary, and to recognise that those appointments will run through to July 2023, unless there are changes which are necessary because of members no longer being members or changing their roles, etc. To note that the appointments made on the 8th of July 2019 is set out in Appendix B, also remain in place till 2013, although, as I say, there will be two amendments. And thirdly, to approve the delegation to the Corporate Director Operational to agree the funding management agreement and other associated documentation necessary for the removal of the requirement for Cabinet to appoint a trustee to the Braintree Museum Trust, and any necessary agreements for the ongoing management of the Council's relationship with the Museum Trust. And the details of that are actually set out in paragraph 3.8 onwards. So in terms of the Appendix A, that remains as is. Just one change, two changes there. Councillor Ritchie replaces Councillor Mrs Schmidt on both the Community Safety Partnership and on the Essex Police Fire and Crime Panel, and those are both replacements with Councillor Mrs Smith's agreement. It's not a forced retirement on that. The Youth Strategy Group, Councillor Tattersley will take over from Councillor Cunningham, because that sits more appropriately with his portfolio, particularly which has children and young people. And on the Braintree District Local Highways Panel, Councillor Horner asked to stand down, and Councillor Euston will replace. And on the Essex Rural Partnership, Councillor Iona Parker will take that, and she works with the portfolio which has rural communities, so it seems to make sense from that point of view. And as far as Appendix B is concerned, it is as printed, except as far as Great Notley Country Park Joint Governance Committee, Joint Venture Committee, where I and Mrs Schmidt have sat. as I now have country parks as part of my county portfolio, I will be there with a county hat on, and so I'm suggesting there that our representatives should be Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Mrs Schmidt. Councillor Ritchie because that sits in with his portfolio there, and Councillor Mrs Schmidt we have there because our operational team do a lot of work as well with Essex on the management of that park. And the Super Essex Steering Board, where we have Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Hensman, that will now just be Councillor Hensman, as Councillor Cunningham is Deputy Cabinet Member at County with the portfolio that has broadband in it and will be there in that role. So at this stage we will just delete Councillor Cunningham from that, and Councillor Hensman will be our representative. So those are the things to be considered. Are there any comments or questions from anyone, please? I can't see any on the screen or in here. In which case, can I ask from those that are present in the building, rather in this room, are you happy to accept the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. So far, Kevin, we're not missing your vote. That's useful. Right. Okay. We move on then to item 6 under the Communities and Environment, Climate Change Strategy and Cycling Strategy Engagement, pages 18 to 22. And this will be taken by both Councillor Mrs Smith and Councillor Ritchie. I don't know who's leading off.
I'm leading off. Thank you, Chairman. So set out as per item recommendation 2.1 on page 18 of your agenda. There's some really sound reasons to request this extension. The first reason being that the extended period gives the district an extra chance to have their say on two really important issues and gives us a chance to get some quality responses back. But also, in light of easing of some coronavirus restrictions, it also allows some face-to-face consultations to take place within the council, which we think would be valuable to both of the engagement processes. Once the engagement is closed, there'll be two sets of data to disseminate by officers and collate and set out into a report, which is also going to be quite a large task too. And then ideally, we'd like to be able to share this with the two working groups, and it would be a huge disservice to both the groups if we didn't have a chance to review both of those in its substance, given the amount of work that both groups have done in getting us to a draft strategy in the climate change and the cycling strategies. And also the recommendation for the extra meeting. I'm sure my colleagues would agree the last additional meeting that we had was a really good meeting. It was a great success. And it was good to be able to do that without the pressure of other council business, given the weight that these two strategies are holding. So wholeheartedly commend these two recommendations to my Cabinet members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Mrs Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. Unsurprisingly, Councillor Ritchie and I are completely in agreement on this, particularly on the climate change engagement. When we did our last one, sad to say there was only something like 8 responses from the members of the public, but I'm pretty sure now this time it's very much in everyone's mind, and we are hoping to get a huge number of responses. And because of that, I want to be able to say with my hand on my heart that we have looked in great detail at every response, and by having this further time, it will give officers opportunity to do this, and then again for our strategy, our group to have working group to look at it. And it doesn't mean that work is not going on. Work has been going on for the past 5 years to help us with our cutting back on CO2 and other climate matters. And so this delay will not stop anything. It's all carrying on just as before, but we'll be looking in much greater detail at responses from the public. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Schmidt. Are there any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure we can all support both of these proposals. The extension to allow for additional comments from the general public, which are valuable, and I very much hope will be forthcoming, and for the additional meeting, as has been said, it would be good to have a standalone meeting unencumbered by other council business where the matters can be properly examined. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Bowers.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I welcome this and both the recommendations for the strategies. I think it's a good idea to take as much time as possible as we can to take on board all views, and also to involve the working groups, which obviously may play a major part in the process. Just ask one brief question. It mentions about how we're going to do the engagement. It mentions the interactive online engagement and then broad and targeted resident engagement. Just sort of quick question in regards if we've got, because we've always been an inclusive council and we obviously want to include everyone's views. So for residents that are like not have access to social media or online, what does that sort of engagement look like? Just making sure that we're getting to all areas of our residents, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as was reported in the press release that was done, and on the website too, it does state quite clearly that if paper copies are required, they will be provided for people. And so no one need not see the whole strategy and therefore respond to it. And the different ways are listed in 3.4 that we will be contacting the public. And so everything hopefully should be covered. Everyone will get an opportunity.
Okay, Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Right. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Mrs. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely agree with the three recommendations. Just a quick question, because I have shared both those strategies with the parish councils in my ward, but when I did look at them myself, it wasn't immediately apparent to me what the deadline was. So I was grateful if the Cabinet member could just check that the deadline is clear, and certainly the new revised deadline is clear on the consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe it's the 6th of July is the new date, but we will ensure that that's publicised on all of our, certainly our electronic material online, and we'll just check to make sure that's out in the public realm via press, etc.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I've not got any hands up either on screen or here. In which case, the recommendations, there are three recommendations, members, on page 18 in para 2.1. Are you happy to accept those recommendations? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 7A, which starts at page 23 on your agenda, the Open Spaces Supplementary Planning Document -- Open Spaces Action Plan. And this is going to be introduced by Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to present the Open Spaces Action Plan for 2021. This forms part of this Council's evidence base for securing planning obligations from developers to enhance existing open spaces or to provide new ones. Members will, I imagine, be aware that this document is updated annually. This year, the consultation period was extended by several weeks, which was to allow for some parish councils not being able to meet quite as regularly as they normally do and discuss their requirements. This was, due to COVID restrictions. And at this point, I would like to thank our Planning Policy Officer, Alex Evans, for putting together the plan, but also providing advice to the town and parish councils, which I know from feedback I have received was very much appreciated. There was a good level of response to the consultation. 45 town or parish councils, 4 ward members, 2 sports clubs and 4 sport non-governing bodies, as well as, of course, the internal consultees. And just a comment from me on what might appear to be a low number of ward members responding, just 4, but I do know that many district councillors attend their ward, parish and town council meetings and take part in the OSAP discussions and contribute that way. It's certainly something that I do and have done over the years. So I think quite often their input comes during parish council meetings and is reflected that way. One difference this year, for improved clarity, in addition to the usual Cabinet report and the plan, we are including an Appendix 2 list of changes made from the previous plan so that everyone can see what is different from the last one, but also projects which were submitted but not included as they did not meet the criteria. So we thought officers thought that might be just helpful. I do have one other thing to add this evening. During the day today, Fearing Parish Council contacted Alex Evans and he subsequently had a telephone conversation with the parish clerk and also sent quite a detailed email. They came forward regarding some minor changes that they wanted made to their entries and some things they'd spotted in the document that they felt were not entirely accurate. Although these are minor changes, they're obviously important to the village and the residents and the parish council. And as I say, Alex has subsequently had a conversation and an exchange of emails. So what he has made clear is that although the OSAP is the main published document, which will hopefully be approved by Cabinet this evening, officers do keep all submitted entries for internal use, and they will refer back to these when looking at specific comments for further context. So, in other words, although Fearing's points made during the day today won't appear in print in the final document, they will be taken into account in the future if any Section 106 money comes forward for the village. So I hope that they are reassured by that. And in view of that, members, the recommendation which is set out on page 23 of the agenda will be changed. There are two recommendations, and I will, in view of this, just read them. The first one is to delegate authority to the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure to review the late representations received from Fearing Parish Council and to determine any amendments to the OSAP as necessary. And recommendation 2, to adopt the OSAP as presented to Cabinet, subject to any amendments brought forward by the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure. Thank you, Chairman. That's all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Mr Spray. Any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Mann.
I pop up at this time every year, Chairman, to applaud the work that goes into this document and to state, you know, what a valuable resource it is for sort of everyone concerned. A question. We are hoping, I think, in the future to see sort of a greater emphasis on open spaces and in particular perhaps community woodlands. Is there a role in this process in the future and in the action plan, a role perhaps for the identification and maybe even through 106 monies, the acquisition of sites for future community woodland?
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Mrs Spray.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Butler. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Very interesting, relevant question. I think at the moment, community woodlands probably falls outside the scope of the OSAP as it stands now. There is going to be at some stage a review of the OSAP and Section 106 monies and what can be included with a view to expanding it. I can't give a time scale on that for the moment because it's quite a large piece of work, but I think that's certainly something we could have a look at. It does cross over to a certain extent, obviously, with the portfolio of my colleague, Councillor Schmidt. But certainly I would make a note of that, and I think it's something we will have a look at. Thank you.
Thank you,
And now,
Chair.
Councillor Mr Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, indeed, at the next council meeting, the paper from the working group on community woodlands will be coming before council, and there will be comments and recommendations in that. And it is something that has been on our agenda for a long time, but as I'm sure you understand, it does all come down to not just money, but people willing to give up land for such a thing. But it is very much on our radar, so thank you for the question.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've been asked by one or two parish councils to express thanks to the Planning Policy Officer for agreeing to extend the deadline. They're very grateful for that, and it was in direct response to their requests. So, and I'm happy to support that grateful thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions at all? I'm not seeing any on the screen or in here. In which case, the recommendation slightly amended, and is to delegate authority to the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure to review the late representations received from Fearing Parish Council and determine any amendments to the OSAP as necessary, and to adopt the OSAP as presented to Cabinet this evening, subject to any amendments brought forward by the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure. Those of you who are present, are you happy to accept that recommendation? Agreed. Thank you very much. We then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is under the heading of Health and Wellbeing, the appointment of Mental Health Champion. This is on page 90 of your agenda, and I will ask Councillor Tattersley to introduce the paper. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm here to ask Cabinet to agree to support recommendation 2.1 on page 90. Mental health has become a major issue in the COVID-19 pandemic, with numbers being diagnosed and treated increasing all the time, and I suspect there are a lot more that we're not being made aware of and are not reported. The point that I want to make on this one specifically is that whilst many of us sympathise with those living with mental health, together with their carers, I think very few of us can truly empathise with the difficulties that they face. And I believe that a positive way the Council can support the mental health challenge that's outlined very well in this paper is by appointing 2 council members as mental health champions who can take an active interest in the issue and can contribute to the work of the organisers and feed back to the council's actions it can take through its Live Well and Wellbeing programmes. The champions will be invited to the appropriate Cabinet member briefings held by Councillor Ritchie and myself and the Cabinet support member for any support they might need. And I move the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Any comments or questions from anyone? No, I don't see any. In which case, the recommendations are set out on page 90 of your agenda, paragraph 2.1, that we agree to sign up to the Local Authorities Mental Health Challenge, and secondly, that we appoint Councillors Diana Garrod and Andrew Hensman as the Councillors Member Champions. Could I have the agreement or otherwise of people agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Right, that takes us to item 9. There are urgent business. I have no notification of any urgent business, and therefore I must ask you to put down your pens, put your examination scripts in order, and I will declare the meeting closed at 7:43. Thank you very much. Thank you to colleagues who joined us on the screen as well, and hopefully we will soon be able to all meet in the same room face to face. Thank you very much and good evening, and I'll ask colleagues to deal with the technical side to switch us off. Thank you.